Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back once again to Evolution Sim Racing tonight, ahead of round 6 of our GT3 Season 7 Championship. We're back once again for a bit more racing action tonight at the Sebring International Raceway this evening for this 1-hour feature race event. My name is Joseph Glass, and it's my pleasure as always to be joined inside the commentary box alongside Mr. Dara Thacker. And Dara, as you and our viewers can probably see behind that graphic there, the drivers are experiencing some of that typically treacherous Floridian weather on a circuit that's going to continue to be wet as we head to the conclusion of this practice session, and the forecast suggests that it's going to continue like this right up until the racing gets underway a little bit later on this evening.
The rain's never hurt anybody, has it? It's always good to see a little bit of precipitation on the racetrack. Going to be interesting to see how that's going to affect qualifying. Of course, a lot of these drivers will want to get a good position for qualifying with the 1-hour race, meaning that there will be no rebunching of the field with any kind of reverse grid, or even just, almost like a restart after 30 minutes. So these drivers are going to be having to slide their way through, but that's all part of the challenge, isn't it?
It is. We've seen this kind of condition a couple of times already this season. We had the invert of this, I believe it was around Zolder, where we went from dry conditions into the wet. And then we had that full wet session around Virginia just a handful of weeks ago, which was a bit of a challenge for a lot of those drivers, I think it's safe to say. Tonight, however, it's the inverse. These guys have spent the last 45 minutes practicing in these wet conditions. They'll have to qualify in these same conditions, get through that first phase of the race, and then it'll be about who's going to bite the bullet first, come into the pits for those slick tyres while the track is just about drying up. And it'll obviously be a good battle between people who are a little bit tentative to come in. They might lose out on some of that track time. However, if you come in too soon, you could find yourself on the barrier pretty quickly.
Yeah, luckily enough, the barriers are a little bit further back at a circuit like Sebring. However, you are right, it is very easy to find yourself drifting into one of these barriers, particularly at one of the parts of the circuit where there isn't a ton of runoff. I'm thinking down at turns 2, 3, and down towards 6, and then on the exit of the hairpin, the barriers aren't a million miles away, so we definitely could see some drivers finding them. And even down the main straight, of course, barriers either side of the tarmac, no room for error. Going to be interesting to see, but very much looking forward to this one. Going to be important for the championship, considering we're going to be well into the second half of the season after this one.
Speaking of which, Dara, you bring me up onto the next segment nicely there. So, quick word for the sponsors. As always, that's the Kame group and the GP2 group. Almost said Kame GP2 there, as if they're a team in the championship. Alongside Keenan Eco Energy. So, as always, a big thank you to those three for their continued support. And we can take a look now as we cross over, as you rightly say, Dara, into the second half of the season. Round 6 to go tonight. Then we find ourselves at Kota and Imola for dry conditions. Mugello will be some more mixed conditions ahead of the season finale around that mountain and the hills of Bathurst. So we're getting up to the business end of things now, and this is the kind of session tonight, 1 hour in mixed conditions, that will really start to define how these guys' seasons are going to end up. So we can take a look then at the standings for this championship, and as always, let's take a look at how the Premier class line up as we head into round 6. So it's Robin O'Brown who leads the way narrowly ahead of Eddie Adcock. These two drivers dropping the points that they scored in last week's session. Of course, this championship boasts that one drop round, meaning that the worst points scored, the worst tally, scored from one of the 10 championship rounds will be dropped from your overall score. It just so happened that the 2 championship challenges drop the same round at the same time. And interestingly, Dara, as you can see, a lot of those cars have DNF'd at some point throughout this season, meaning that that is their drop round, meaning that they are losing very little. There's only actually 4 drivers inside the Premier class who've dropped any points at all, and Brown and Adcock significantly more than anybody else. Jan Osberg is a driver who's also dropped a handful of points, but he's only dropped 5 in comparison to the 45 and the 63 dropped by the top 2. However, he is about as far away from Adcock as Fraser is to him. The Moonshiners Racing Club driver sitting pretty comfortable at the moment, but he's got to watch out for James Bostock, who's in behind him, trying to keep that fight inside the top 5 alive. But James Robinson in that BMW just 1 point behind, about to cross over into the 200-point region. James Howarth is next in P7, ahead of Maxim Dimitrov in the McLaren in the top 8, the highest rated McLaren on the grid, I believe, as things stand. It's Scott Kostrick next, who had a pretty poor time of it this time last week, and as we keep saying pretty much every week, hasn't quite been able to bring back that form that he found in that second race, which feels like a long time ago, around Donington Park. And then it's Robin Aston rounding out the top 10, ahead of Ryan Blackie and John Ludbrook, the top 12.
Yeah, over across in the Evo standings, it's relatively tight at the top, actually. Andy Schell does lead the way on 317 points. And of all 4 classes, including those in Split A, Andy Schell on 317 points is the lowest amount of points for a championship leader at this stage of the season. He's being run slightly close by Ryan Abbots for the time being. He's just shy of 300 points, as is Bert Ten Kart, who's on 291, not a million miles away. So Ten Kart definitely in the running as well. Danny Ware on the outside looking in, but 5 podiums in 5 races after 2 DNFs early on in the season means he is really on a hot streak of form. We'll see if he can break into the top 3 tonight, with Robert Savage and Andre Muntian in 5th and 6th. But again, close battles. That's kind of a theme that we see in this particular class. There isn't a lot to split quite a few of these drivers. Wesley Van Rijn in that McLaren, the highest ranking of the McLarens, in 7th. He leads a trio of them, Sander Tabbers and James Palo, 8th and 9th. Wins for both of those drivers early on in the season, with Gareth Newton in P10. He hasn't quite been able to replicate the form that he showed to get the double P3 in the opening round of the season. We'll see what he can do tonight, if anything. Jan Noj for the Sheep Valley Racing, of course, won the opening race, hasn't necessarily been able to reach those heights since. We'll see what he can do. And with Dominic Backhouse in 12, we have overall 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 winners, race winners inside the top 11, which is fantastic to see.
Yeah, that probably goes a long way to suggest why Mr. Andy Chell is at the moment leading the championship with the least amount of points. But as you say, it makes for a good championship. I believe, sadly though, that Ryan Abbots is not with us tonight, so I'm not sure which round he's dropped so far. He's attended all of which so far and scored actually quite well in all of them. So if he turns out not to make it tonight, then this will of course be his drop round ahead of the run-in to the final couple of weeks of the championship. So let's take a quick look at how things shape up in the Teams Championship. And if my memory serves me correctly, we have a new leader in the front of the standings. It's the RDSA team of Yannis Aubert, Tristan de Robriga and Luke Lucchesi, who are just 1 point ahead of the Quartermass Motorsports team of Bobby Trunley, Andy Chell, Robert Savage and Ryan Blackie. So it's definitely heating up there, as you can see, at the top of the championship. 4 versus 3. And it's the sort of, how do I say, that the veterans of ESR versus most of the debutants, I believe, in ESR. So let's hope that that one goes right down to the wire. It's gone this close so far, all the way through 6 weeks. Only 1 point separating these guys. I'm sure that will continue over the next 4. It's the Axis Sim Sports team of Thomas Pugh, Chris Jennings, Austin Grave and Andre Muntian, who are just ahead of the RLH team of Alex Fretwell, James Palo, Wesley Van Rijn and Thiago Araiza. Then it's a little bit of a gap down to the top 5 for LS Racing. Then we reach the Suma GP2 two-man army, the only and the highest, should I say, two-man army that is really in a notable position at the moment, ahead of STL, Then we find ourselves with the two DXT teams, DXT Solar and DXT Luna. Rob Mackay, Howarth, Seward, Weir, Hoyland, Brandy, Donnelly and Kenyon trying to stay ahead of Conehead Racing in the top 10. Beyond them, it's the Veraco Esports team, Sheep Valley Racing, Kame GP2, Alpha 1 Esports and CRM Racing inside the top 15. And Dara, the practice timer, has just struck 0 as we join the drivers on trackside. We're about to get underway with some qualifying. This is where the pressure really starts to mount in these kind of conditions.
Yeah, and to take this times with a pinch of salt that you see, it does look like the track is getting a little bit wetter from the conditions at the start of practice, which could be why Edward Adcock has a 1.2 second advantage over anybody. But we're going to jump straight into qualifying, 50 minutes on the clock, and the drivers aren't going to have many laps to get their lap times in. And also, you've got to remember that if the lap time is, upwards of 2.25 minutes, then 4 laps alone are going to be 11 minutes. So they don't really have much room to come back to the pit lane and come out again. So yeah, definitely pressure on for all of these drivers, and not least John Ludbrook in the 114.
Yeah, some guys, of course, like to just get away from the sim in the break after practice. Hopefully, those guys have got away a little bit sooner tonight because, as you say, they're going to be under a lot of time pressure. Only 10 drivers on the track immediately as the green flag is waved. So some of these guys under a little bit of time pressure already. It's good to see the likes of Osberg and the championship challenger Adcock already out onto the circuit. But we're right on board with the 114, the Kame GP2 machine of John Ludbrook. He is going to try to put down a lap time, but again, it's, they've just come out of 45 minutes of practice. I'm sure their bodies are warm, their minds are warm to these conditions, but the track and the tyres on the way around this will feel pretty difficult, I would imagine, for these guys at the moment. And it's about how you can improve that outlap to try and make them all count. The first lap will be pretty sketchy for a lot of these guys, but hopefully by the time they reach their final qualifying run, the car will feel as comfortable as it did during practice.
Yeah, that's always the hope for drivers. They never really want too many differences between the cars after they come out of practice. They may have felt quite comfortable in how in the cars after practice. They don't really want that to change around too much. And for Ludbrook in that Heisenfeld liveried entry, we'll see what he can do. Of course, on his outlap, it's such a long outlap here. I mean, you're in the rain, you're going slower than you would be. It's 2.5 minutes to really be thinking about how you're going to attack turn 1 and turn 2, and it's such a long time for you to try and keep it all together in a lap. We're really going to see some of the best drivers rise to the front. Of course, rain the great equalizer, of course. This is going to be a real test for the drivers, and at a point in the season that some championship contenders wouldn't mind just having an easy day.
Absolutely right. And as you say, yes, it levels out the competition, and it also kind of changes the way people make these setups. Some guys get pretty used to setting up a car in dry conditions, but when it comes to maximizing it in the wet, not everybody has that same level of experience. Interestingly, both of the Suma GP2 cars still inside the pit lane. That's Scott Kostrick and Robin Noel Brown. But in the meantime, let's ride on board with Mr. Ludbrook as he sets off on his first flying lap here around Sebring International Raceway. Gets on the brakes down into turn 1, a near 90 degree, quite an open left-hander. You've got to pick your braking point through the kink of 2, which is here, then the left-hander of turn 3, through the kink of 4, wouldn't really count that as a corner, but it's there nonetheless, and then into that ever-tightening left-hander at turn 5. Got to be careful on the power here. You're really eager to get the car going because you've got a long run all the way down through Big Bend at 6 here, up until the hairpin. The first significant straight line braking zone on the circuit. Really tricky to get it slowed down. I would guess it could be first gear in these conditions. Ludbrook gets that slowed down nicely. Is he going to get it tucked in? Yes, he is. He's kind of making the most of the normal racing line on this first portion of the lap. Not seeing him being too adventurous in trying to find the grip through turn 8 and 9, and then turn 10. What will be tricky was picking a braking zone through the next section of track. 11, 12 and 13, you arrive at the corner kind of with some steering lock on here. Pretty difficult to get it slowed down in the dry, never mind in the wet. Avoiding the puddle there on the left hand side. Here he is then through turn 12 there into 13. Good lap so far by John, considering it's his first. No big moments running wide or running deep. He's only got a couple of corners to go. It's going to be, well, I think will still be a flat out corner through 14 over both of these curves into 15 through Le Mans. There, he's braking now for the first time offline, which is good to see in these conditions. Through 15 and 16, just 2 more braking zones to go now. Really open up that corner. No track limits. Well, some track limits on that corner, but really, really excessive. Staying off the curb, and now he's got one last corner to go in the run down to Sunset. It's a really, really tricky one to get right in the dry. Never mind in the wet. Let's see where he brakes, and let's see if he takes maybe slightly wider line than what we're used to. Turns in quite early, but does let it drift out wide, get it tucked in to that right-hand side, back on the power, let it drift out to the left-hand side of the circuit. I think he's going to be the first man across the line, and I believe that would have been a valid lap time from Ludbrook. Let's see what time is good enough. Adcock sets a 2:16.657. Ludbrook, a tenth and a half behind him.
A decent enough lap, it seems, in the early stages of this qualifying session for John Ludbrook, just behind him, but Adcock, who did dominate so well in that practice session by over a second. He's now got Jan Osberg, though, to contend with as he goes to the top of the timesheets with a 2:16.591. Robert Savage from the Evo said in the first time, albeit 3 seconds down. We'll see if he can try and find a little bit more pace, or whether someone can replace him at the top. Interesting to see that there's quite a few drivers who haven't necessarily set competitive lap times, but then there's a really big clump up near the front of the field, showing who has and who really hasn't set some representative lap times in this qualifying session. 10 karts gone to the top of the timesheets in that Evo class, and a lap that would be good enough for P8 overall right now, so a good lap time from the Audi driver.
Yeah, I think it's quite a quiet session down there in the Evo class tonight. Only 10 or so of those drivers, so a good opportunity for them to score some points, even if the session doesn't go their way. Here's one of them at the moment in that lovely chrome and black McLaren, heading his way around the final corner now. This is Owen Stewart, the 21. He's yet to set his lap time, comes across the line to set what hopefully will be his first. It's a 2:17.8 to beat for Seward. Good enough for the second row in class, but over 2 seconds away from the current class leader, Bert Tinkat.
Yeah, let's keep an eye on how this one's going to shape up over the coming 8.5 minutes, because this is an intriguing qualifying session with the conditions that there are, as we see Jan Osberg now trying to improve on his lap time already, a 16.5, good enough in the front of the field for the time being, but he's looking to extend that gap. Really important for a lot of these drivers to get lap times in this session. You cannot afford being too far back, as Robin L. Brown, a full second clear of the field, he pops it up into provisional pole.
Yeah, great lap there by Noel Brown. Fastest in the first 3 sectors. Sector 4 goes to Adcock, 5 and 6 to Ludbrook. Interestingly, Osberg's up there with consistency alone. He has improved in the first 4 sectors. Nothing lighting up the timing sheets in terms of purple sectors at the moment. Let's bring that up so we can see how those guys get on. Is he going to be able to take him back? A second, I think, Dara, would be a little bit too much to ask for so soon. That could be a pretty defining lap there by Noel Brown, the championship leader.
Yeah, that could be a fantastic way to get himself onto the pole position here this evening. I mean, Jan Osberg is closing that gap to only 4 tenths per second, but it's going to be a case of, can anybody else beat that kind of pace? Dimitrov, Henry Kuhl and Robert Savage, they will improve, but they're not going to go too much further forward in their respective classes. What of Robin Aston, though? As he comes up towards the line in his Porsche, needs a few tenths to get himself onto the front 2 rows, but he's not going to improve there at all. And Sheesby not improving either. Habermacher up to 11th, Liam Fraser up to 12th as he improves in his Mercedes-Benz. But again, no one challenging Robin Noel Brown, and only Osberg still within the second.
Andy Chell takes provisional pole position in the Evo class of 17.329, just shy of half a second now away from Jan Naj. Burton Cat has been demoted all the way from the top down to P4. He's got nearly half a second to find if he wants to get back onto the front row of the grid. Of course, the only Audi in the field in the entire championship, not as it stands. He's the only Audi in the entire championship, and it's interesting. Oh, and that's not going to be an improved lap time. He's going to continue. He will have 1 or 2 more stabs at it if he can keep it on the road. Of course, that's cut away from Bird. He can recoup in the next half of that lap, and he can go again. Here's Noel Brown about to enter into Sunset Bend, the final corner. He improved to a 15.4. Is he going to extend that gap from 4 tenths? Let's see. As he comes across the line, gets very close to that exit barrier there, manages to keep it in a straight line, crosses the line, doesn't improve. He has another couple of goes to go, but he doesn't improve on that lap. That somewhat opens the door for the likes of Adcock, who've actually only improved in one sector in this lap. Probably not going to be enough to get onto the front row at this rate.
No, I mean, still got another couple of laps to try and get it done, but it's not looking great. Edward Adcock this time around. You can see how slippery that concrete is. The reflection of the clouds off the surface really shows you how much standing water there is on what is already quite a bumpy surface here at Sebring. Around the final corner comes Adcock. Is he able to improve from his 2:16.6? I don't believe he will. It's not even a valid lap time, I don't believe. Jan Osberg went faster. He's closed that gap to Robin Noel Brown to just about a quarter of a second. But again, Noel Brown still holding the advantage. Can he even try and bring that down again from a 15.5? We'll have to wait and see. As Matthias Eggert comes out of the final corner, only needs about 8 thousandths to get himself up into P6. He's not able to find... No, he's not able to find any more time. 17.6 is nearly his best lap time, but not quite there. But he's just about to hold off Habermacher for the time being.
Jan Nausch back into the pit lane. It was a time good enough for P2. That's just been beaten by Wesley van Rijn, who just goes with inside a tenth of a second of Andy Chell, who has taken that position back. Of course, we saw that earlier as he crossed the line. Good lap, though, by van Rijn, who will go for one more tour of the circuit before this session concludes. Anthony Flamel next across the line. He's currently down there inside the top 25 in the pro class. Does improve by a couple of places up into the top 23. And I'm thinking Andy Chell halfway around the lap, him and Wesley van Rijn on more or less the same part of the circuit. Night over for Sarika Desler, Habermacher, Eggert, Adcock and Osberg. Their times are now set. Here comes Ludbrook though. It looks as though pole position is going to be set. Nobody is lighting up the timing sheets. He's only improved in one sector so far, and this time we saw him skimming the barrier at the exit of the final corner last lap. This lap he makes contact with it, and that is his night over as well, or his qualifying over at least for the time being.
Yeah, we'll have to see if anybody else can really improve. We're seeing an increasing amount of drivers come down pit road. Danny Weir is still out on circuit, and he's gone to the provisional pole in the Evo class. 16.8 is a fantastic lap. That's a lap that would be good enough for P6 overall. That's just how good it is. From the number 55. John Ludbrook's around the final corner. Can he do anything? It doesn't look like he will. No, a 17.4 is just not going to be good enough, or a 16.5 is what it is in the end. It's an improvement, but it's not going to move him up from P3, and he'll maybe have to try and go again. As we have a look at Danny Weir coming through the field, he really has been like a bolt, hasn't he, this session?
Yeah, I'm really conscious not to let his results slip our minds. As we saw last week, that's very deep. He has got it slowed down though, the 55. He's going to keep it on the circuit, but it doesn't look like that's going to be wholesale improvements for him. However, he's still, got a couple of opportunities in his belt to try and extend that margin. Andy Chell must be thinking, what more do I have to do? Speaking of which, he's coming around the final corner now, and he has improved in 2 sectors. Something tells me, though, it's not going to be enough. He's gained nearly 0.3 of a second, brought that margin down to under 0.3 of a second. But Danny Weir still doing what he has to do. Van Rijn is on his 3rd and final lap. Danny Weir will have this one and then another. And aside from that, there's only about 6 or 7 drivers left on the circuit. Let's ride on board with Danny as he enters the final couple of sectors. Let's see if he can get inside the top 5 on the track. Never mind provisional pole in class.
Because, of course, the more cars he has between himself and the likes of Andy Chell and Wesley van Rijn, the better it's going to be for Danny Weir, because he's just going to be able to play a little bit easier towards the front of the field. Doesn't have to keep the drivers immediately behind him off the race start. He can afford to maybe be a bit conservative off the start. And at somewhere like Sebring, especially through the likes of Turn 1 and Turn 2, which do tighten up, then it's not a bad thing, really, to have that advantage in your back pocket. Few improvements, few non-improvements for Danny Weir as he's about to come around this final corner. It's normally Sunset Bend. It's not really as picturesque as it can be, but what can Danny Weir do out of the final corner? Across the timing line, is it going to be good enough for an improvement? I don't think it's going to be. The 18.9's deceptive, as we found out just a minute ago, but it is going to be a 17.9. That is not quite enough. He's about a second down on what he did last time round, and that should be Danny Weir done for the session.
Yeah, I think so, but he will not complain about that at all. Oh, I'll tell you who might be complaining a little bit about that, but is he going to style it out? No, I was optimistic that Mr. Howarth might have been able to recover that one. It looked as though he had a chance, but sadly not, and just at the right time there, Scott Kostrick comes sweeping by, and he is about to cross the line to be one of the final drivers to do so. Weir and Van Ren will still have one more bite at the cherry before the session is concluded. We could still see a change for position. In fact, Van Ren is improving in 3, well, sadly not in that 6th sector, but he has had an absolutely flying opening first half of the lap. It might see him take Andy Chell, potentially, in what is the last effort. We can see the sun beginning to peek through the clouds. As the forecast predicted, the start of the race will still be wet, but by the end, we'll expect it to be dry. He does improve, not enough to step onto the front row of his class, and Danny Weir is the last man out on the circuit, Dara. He doesn't need to improve, and the session has come to an end.
No improvements from anybody now, and it will be Robin Earl Brown who will hold the advantage down into turn 1. Can he manage to take that down to, or keep it as a lead down into the opener corner? We'll wait and see. Of course, an hour will be on the clock for this race, and more than enough time for drivers to try something on the strategy, wait for moves. Yeah, we're going to have an age, quite frankly, Joe.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I'm really, really interested to see how the strategy will play out for some of these drivers, because again, it's always tricky, I think, when you go from wet to dry. It's a risk sometimes, you know. It's a bit easy to go from dry to wet. You just drive until you start losing grip, but sometimes when it's reversed and you're going from wet to dry, it's really tricky to try and find that optimum point to go onto the dry tyre without, 1, losing out on that grip, and then 2, overheating those wet tyres, which is quick to do, and the drop-off can be quite significant. So these guys are going to be really on the ball, trying to remember how it felt the lap before and the last couple of laps, and try to be brave and make that call. Something would tell me the race leader probably won't be the first man into the pit lane. It's usually someone who's got less to lose who will maybe come in first, but as soon as someone does, I'm sure that will set off a chain reaction. Let's take a look then at how the grid will line up for this 1-hour feature race, and this will be how the drivers lead their way down into turn 1. It's going to be the championship leader in the Premier class, Mr. Robin Noel Brown. He set a time of a 2:15.544, 2.5 tenths clear of Jan Osberg, the 199. Those two lock out the front row of the grid ahead of John Ludbrook and Edward Adcock on row 2. It'll be Dean Sheesby who's had a good qualifying to start up there in the top 5, and then it's the pole man in the Evo class of Danny Weir. Robin Aston and Matthias Eggert will be on row 4 ahead of Andy Chell and Wesley Van Ren inside the top 10. Justin Habermacher and Bruno Silva start ahead of Klaas Janssen and Hussein Sadaka Desler, ahead of Jan Noj and Andre Muntien inside the top 16. Then it's Burton Cat, Liam Fraser, Rob Mackay and Austin Grafe on the 10th row of the grid. James Howarth and Adam Waters will start ahead of Clyde Veyer and Maxime Dimitrov, with Martin Koch in the top 25. It'll be Ryan Blackie, Scott Kostrick, Adam Baker, Anthony Flamel and Sander Tabbers inside the top 30. Mark Van Mulken, Robert Savage, Pete Paeva, Owen Seward and Rob Gregg the top 35, with Nicky Mering, Brandon Smith, Lewis Plath, Henry Coolan and Evan May in the top 40. And then we see just James Pallett and Simon Wareham with a little bit of a qualifying session to forget for those drivers toward the back of the field. Quite a big spread there, 6 seconds from front to back, but again, everybody in their individual battles, and that really won't impact the guys toward the front in any way, shape or form. But of course, if someone at the front was to have a spin, they might get caught out with the pace of some of the guys toward the back.
It's going to be really important off the start to get away, try and avoid any kind of incident that we could see. Sebring is a circuit where we've got to be careful on the opening lap, and we will be a witness to that, I'm sure. But these guys will be traipsing round behind the pace car, ready to get going, and just thinking about how they're going to address the opening couple of corners. Of course, it will get drier throughout the race. They will know that, and know that if they can survive the first few laps, and they may be on track for a good finish by the end of the race. But so many variables in a race like this. Is Eddie Adcock decided to go around. Oh,
back to the pit lane. That's Eddie Adcock. Back to the pit lane. There's an incident with Danny Weir here, going into the hairpin, pretty slow at the moment, and as Eddie just lost it of his own accord. Yeah, he understeered, got tagged by one of the Camry cars there, and it's caused a little bit of a bunch up, but people are okay. So that is crucial there for the championship leader qualified in P4, I believe, and now he's starting right from the back, inside the pit lane. That will kind of bunch up that right-hand column. Everybody in the order will gain a place, and now all of a sudden, Jan Osberg is going to share the front row with Robin Noel Brown.
Well, I didn't really see that coming. That wasn't on my bingo card, that's for sure. But Noel Brown now has a bit of a little bit more breathing room. Edward Adcock's going to be absolutely furious with himself. There's no doubt about that. Going from a top 4 to, I mean, outside the top 40, it's incredible. Yeah. Incredibly bad luck, really. Let's see how he's able to adapt to this, because it's going to be tricky. That is for sure. Noel Brown won't really have a care in the world, though, because all he's focusing on is trying to get to turn 1 in P1, and then he can worry about the rest later.
Of course, from a strategy point of view, it doesn't really serve Adcock any benefit, of course. These guys will not only have to change tyres, but will also have to refuel their machines at some point during the race. My point was going to be, now not to suggest that he should do this, but, you know, he might think, do I just go on slick tyres from the start of the race and try and keep it on the track? Now, I don't think that will be an optimal way to run the race, but of course, these guys will probably have to come in well before the fuel tank is empty, because the track may dry up. Again, the rain is probably going to stop quite soon. In fact, the rain is about to stop already. It doesn't look that heavy anymore, but of course the track surface will still be damp for quite some time. Of course, for 40 cars circulating the track at once, a dry line will form pretty quickly. But yeah, these guys, something tells me these guys are going to end up going in once for tyres and then a second time for fuel later on. But we're soon going to see how that's going to play out. Robin Noel Brown will lead them across the line, and it's been handed really to Jan Osberg. Danny Weir will fancy his chances as well of getting ahead of Andy Chell and of Wesley Van Ren. He's holding them right to the line, then he drops the hammer, and Robin Noel Brown gets us underway for an hour here at Sebring, immediately coming over to the right hand side of the circuit. Fingers crossed everybody gets it slowed down nicely as we head into turn 1, too wide in most situations, but it looks as though everyone's getting through keenly. The guys toward the back doing well as well. Noel Brown leading Osberg ahead of Ludbrook and Weir on pole in the Evo class. Sheesby and Aston inside the top 6.
Yeah, good start really from Robin Noel Brown to keep the lead. Jan Osberg will keep him honest, but not able to get through in the opening couple of corners. Liam Fraser battling side by side with a couple of the Evo drivers as they work their way through the order. It's tricky to really pick out who's who in all the spray, but as they make their way underneath the bridge, it's James Hayworth in P14 looking to try and get back after Adam Waters was able to get through on him. Oh, nearly a big moment and nearly a bit of a collision. And as Bert ten Kart, I believe, is in here. That's Wesley Van Rens, who is part of this battle up towards the front of the camera shot. Rob Mackay's battling away, but it's frantic at this part of the track. And nearly a couple of cars going around. Yeah,
Maxim Dimitrov nearly had a little bit of a worry there. He's picked up front damage on his McLaren already in the first couple of corners, and in fact is that rear damage on the back of that McLaren as well. It looks as though that car has been through the wars somewhat. But yeah, we picked up with James Howard there the run down toward turn 7 as well. Yeah, look at that. Wow, that McLaren has seen better days for sure. You can see how twitchy it is. It'll be bad enough in the dry. Must be an absolute nightmare to drive in these conditions, especially having to check in all of your mirrors. Ryan Blackie might fancy his chances to get by. He'll be seeing the damage on that McLaren thinking, yes, this is my chance to try and take up this opportunity. Rob Mackay, the closest driver on the circuit at the moment, closely followed by Adam Waters, who's going to go for it into turn 13, I think that is. No, it's not, it's turn 15, that is, as they head through Le Mans. And there's contact. Rob Mackay maybe try to get the switch back, cut across the rear a little bit too sharply there. Everyone is okay, keeping it in the same order, but that's caused a little bit of a bunch up here with P5 and P6, Jan Noj and Burton Cat. On the run down to Sunset Bend, this pack is pretty feisty at the moment.
It very much is going to be going, I think, for most of the race, this battle. As ten Kart goes wide. Oh, there's contact. There goes Mackay. Is he able to get it righted? Yes, just about. And everyone will avoid him. He'll drop down the order somewhat, but he survives, and that's the main thing. Behind him, though, a couple of drivers nearly going to the wall. Lucky to get away with that one. James Hayworth, part of all of this in his Mustang, the only Mustang that we see on track this evening. As we look at Jan Noj, as he comes through, the Sheep Valley Racing driver for the number 65. Let's see what he can do. Not the best of opening laps, not the worst of opening laps. He's going to be looking to move forward, and 10 Kart's going to be the next obstacle in that path as we look back up to the front in the Evo class.
Yeah, I was going to say, all in all, I think a very successful opening lap there by the drivers, considering the conditions. Dean Sheesby gets himself ahead of the current Evo leader, who's got Robin Aston now in behind him for company. Aston and Eggert, the two buffers between that green and purple Porsche. That's Andy Chell, the championship leader. He's got a 1.77 gap to Wesley Van Ren. So the top 3 in the Evo class inside the top 9 in the field. Danny Weir has just got to keep himself steady, try not to lose time to these pro drivers getting through. His qualifying pace was there though, so he'll be confident that he can definitely stay ahead of these guys. Absolutely no reason to get out the way. Sometimes, for example, when we see these reverse grids in offer, we know that the guys don't really have the pace. They've kind of been fortunate of the system to get toward the front of the class, but Danny's qualified there. He'll be confident in his abilities in these conditions for sure, and I think he's going to make it a little bit difficult for these guys to get through, in the hope that he can stay with a couple of cars buffer in between him, Chell and Van Ren in behind.
And that's the luxury that he's going to be wanting to keep. Of course, it is a luxury. It's not necessarily required, but as they battle in behind, Aston and Eggert trying to go for the inside line, it gives Danny Weir that little bit more breathing room as they work their way towards Sunset Bend. But all's well for the time being for Danny Weir. This is exactly what he wanted to happen, have a couple of cars between himself and Andy Schell, and maybe with the opportunity to try and work his way another couple of spots up the order as well. Dean Sheesby not a million miles away, and you can see how close they are on the circuit, less than half a second away as they come around the final corner. And if these guys behind keep fighting, it's all going to play into Danny Weir's hands, maybe holding up the likes of Andy Schell and Wesley Van Rens to give him even more space in the 55.
You can see just how close it's important to get to the wall, but it's also pretty tricky to keep it there on that inside line. All the leaders now heading through the first couple of corners. But yeah, you're totally right. And oh, actually, there we go. Andy Schell has got himself up past Eggert, so he now only has one car in between him and his class rival. And it's a question for Danny. He'll know that this man is trying to win a championship. The gap not that big, so Andy knows that he needs to get every single point that he can at the moment. But as we said, Danny doing pretty well at the front, toward the front should I say, of the field. Meanwhile though, the gaps between the top 3 really checking out a little bit. 2 seconds to Osberg, 3 seconds to Ludbrook. Those guys are running quite comfortably toward the front at the moment, but of course anything go wrong in a blink of an eye around not only this circuit but these conditions as well.
Yeah, it really is tricky to wrestle the car in conditions like this, but for the time being, after only 6 minutes, drivers are clearly able to manage it the best for the time being. I'm interested as well to see when the track starts to dry and how the drivers are going to be able to adapt with those changing conditions, because it's not going to be this wet all the way through the race. So definitely going to be intrigued just to see as the spray dies down, the drivers are able to do, as we see up in front. Andy Schell will be right behind Danny Weir now, because Danny Weir's been overtaken by Matthias Eggert and Robin Aston. We can see it just in front as Schell now closes up to the back of Danny Weir. Not good for the 55. We're talking about how that 2-car buffer could really help him out. It's eradicated in just about a minute or so.
Yeah, and let's see how the 2 cars differ. Of course, both Porsches, but can be set up in different ways, and it looks as though does Mr. Schell have a little bit more of a straight line advantage. Perhaps he's reduced that deficit down to only half a second now, and I think he'll be really confident in trying to get past Danny. He'll know that his advantage has somewhat dissipated off the start, and now he's got to look in his mirrors and try to defend against Schell. Difficulty is, with only 7 minutes past, 53 left to go, it's going to be really, really difficult for Danny to stay inside the competition. Moves out to the left-hand side to try and pick that breaking point, and it looks as though, Dara, you might agree that the rain has stopped. Obviously the cloud coverage there will slow down the track drying ever so slightly. It's not like the sun is beating down on the tarmac, but we might start to see a dry line form. But something tells me that it's going to be wet tyres throughout for probably the first half of the race, if not more. Those puddles as well will not be drying up anytime soon.
No, I can't imagine it's going to be a particularly quick change, especially with the cloud cover that we do have here. But it will be a significant change over the course of the hour. Of course, drivers may not feel it very much, minute by minute. I think it helps, or the changing conditions are more felt by the fact that we are seeing oh my word, lap times well over 2 minutes here, which means that every time, I mean, you're not going to go round the circuit more than, 27, 28 times. Just, oh, that's Owen Seward in the wall, if you can just about see the rear end of that car. But I was just going to say, as we look at a replay, that with the lap times being over 2 minutes, it means that every time you meet the turn one, it will feel more different than if the lap times were 1 minute. So it's going to take more of an adaptation for these drivers.
Yeah, I was going to say 0 to 0 there from Seward. Made a lovely move up the inside of 1. Lost it on the rear through 2 and 3. And then I think, yeah, then you see the Alpha 1 Esports car having his own trip over the grass. Rejoin not so bad. And then Seward lost it. It didn't even touch the grass, really. He lost it on the tarmac. Then he touched the grass. And then he took a trip into the barrier. That is really quite a good summary of how tricky it is around this kind of circuit in these conditions. You can look like everything's going well. Yes, I've made a position through turn 1. By the time you reach turn 5, you're in the barrier.
So easy to do. And again, as I mentioned earlier on, turn 2, turn 3, that part of the racetrack, the barriers are far closer than they are towards the back end of the circuit. So you've got to be so much more careful through there in making sure that you're not spinning the car or going wide and causing yourself too much risk. I noticed last lap that Robin L. Brown's lap time was in 2-minute 14s. No one else is in the 2-minute 14s. I think it was 2:14.1, showing how much pace he's got right now. He's pulling nearly a second, if not at least a second, on everybody else in the field right now, and it's so impressive to watch. I don't think he'd mind these conditions sticking around for a little while longer.
Looking like we've got a great move on our hands here from the Dutch 153, who's made a move around the outside at Sunset Bend. Not quite going to get his nose ahead into turn 1, but he will be on that grippier inside line. Great move there by Martin Cock. Let's see if we can go back and find how he set up that move. Here it is. Let's see. He came all the way... it's going to be a little bit too late. I wanted to see how he did that in the run through Sunset, but we'll have to just watch on now. He set himself up nicely into turn 1. The Porsche on the outside backs out nice and easy, gets it slowed down. That's one position gained for the Dutchman at the moment, inside the top 20, inside a point scoring position. Pete Paeva is next. He's just outside the order. Burton Cat and Liam Fraser have come together. That's quite an interesting one at the front of the Evo class. It looks as though he's okay. Liam Fraser, however, not so okay. That Mercedes has picked up a little bit of damage and has gone well off the circuit. Is that at the hairpin? Nothing in sight at the moment. Has the car behind just completely lost it on the brakes? Yes, he has. Birkentat just couldn't quite get that one slowed down on the run down toward the hairpin.
Yeah, not the ideal braking performance, as we see yet 10 cut. Oh my word, that's, yeah. It's not ideal, and I don't think that'll be looked upon too kindly as a rule of thumb. And I think Bert Cat will know that and may have a little bit of thinking in the back of his mind that he may be slapped with a stewarding decision after the race. But we will keep an eye on that, of course, through the week, and we'll find out if anything changes in his ability to maybe qualify next week. But either way, Andy Schell doesn't really care. He's trying to chase down Danny Weir. That gap has grown out again. It was down to only a couple of tenths, wasn't it? But it's now back out to 2 seconds, and there is that 105 or 108 of oh no, it is the 105 of Matthias Eggert right between them. And that Danny Weir does have a little bit more buffer once again, but it's not the easiest of tasks still for Danny Weir to hold on, but see what he can do.
Tell you what, the first quarter of this race hasn't spread out as quickly as it did around Virginia, which is great news. 48 minutes still to go, just about a first quarter all said and done, and there's still quite a few nice little battles going on here, and even the drivers that are just around a second or two, as we keep saying in these conditions, that's not an awful lot of time. One mistake, which is so easy to make, as we see Clyde Veyer running wide there. It's quite easy for that gap to be brought back down, but it's very good to see. Edward Adcock, he's had a pretty good progression from the back of the field. Remember, started down, I think, in P40 at the start of the race. It's now back up into the top 30, so within 15 minutes, he's gained 10 places and is only 2 places away from being back inside a scoring position. Now, of course, as we alluded to earlier on in the broadcast, it's he and Robin Noel Brown who are suffering at the moment the biggest points drop of the season, so it wouldn't be the worst thing. Edward, of course, has a lot of points to fall back on as things stand, and of course, as it stands now, this would be the round that he drops. Of course, double points on offer but he's still got to get himself inside the top 20 to even think about scoring. But if he doesn't do too well, he'll know that he can close that gap at the front, because Noel Brown will not be dropping this round, whereas Adcock probably will.
Yeah, there's always that in the back of drivers' minds, because they can't really be thinking about it too heavily
Not in these
in
conditions.
the car, especially when... Oh, well, exactly. And especially with other drivers that having their own permutations, really difficult to do the maths in your head, particularly, again, early-ish on in the season for that kind of thought process. So definitely, I think drivers are just going to be focusing on getting all the points that they can right now, but I think some of them will have that in the back of their mind about the points. Andy Schell's going for a move to the inside. I don't know whether he knows that he can move a little bit closer to Matthias Eggert. He went for the tightest inside line I think I've ever seen, and it may still work out, but he will have lost a little bit of time through the corner. He will gain the position on Matthias Eggert up into what is P7 overall, and Danny Weir will start to get chased down a little bit more as Schell's into the 15.7s now, looking pretty racy in that number 5.
Yeah, the skies there on the right-hand side of the pit lane were looking pretty good, actually. We might see some sort of drying conditions in the next few laps, but I think it's the other side of the circuit. If we run on board once again, you can see that the cloud coverage over to the other side of the track still pretty bad. Wipers still on for the Porsche, even though he's not in any spray. Fingers crossed the wind direction is pushing the clouds away from the circuit. Like I said, the run down towards sunset looks like that could be the first part of the circuit to begin drying up, but I doubt. Oh, and that's rear contact, I think. Matthias Eggert into the back of Andy Schell. Both of them still pointing in the right direction. Robin Aston now under pressure from Danny Weir, which is exactly what he needs to do. As soon as Andy got past Eggert, Eggert got past again, then Schell got back past again, and if Danny can put another car in front of between he and his class rival, then this will be really frustrating Andy. He seems like he's making a step forward, and Danny Weir is getting him back straight away nearly.
Yeah, Danny Weir doing all that he can, really, just to see what he can do on Robin Aston, as Aston is... he's going to start to feel the pressure, I think it's fair to say, in that 1-2-5, as Danny Weir just gets ever closer into the wing mirrors once again, furiously wiping that windscreen dry. Of course, being in the spray, it's not going to help the visibility for Robin Aston, albeit he's got a couple of seconds to Dean Sheesby up ahead. It's going to start to get a little bit more difficult though for Danny Weir as he gets ever closer. There's ever going to be more spray on the windscreen and difficulty in picking exactly where he wants to turn in, but still a long time for the track to dry and that to become less of an issue.
Yeah, it looks like it's been a pretty good couple of corners for Eddie Adcock, who got past Pete Paeva on the inside there, and then the Mercedes of Liam Fraser going a little bit deep on the exit of, I think that was the hairpin. And he says, thank you lads, and look at the traction difference there between those three machines. Adcock is on a bit of a rampage at the moment, getting himself now up into a point scoring position. Scott Kostrick and Jan Naj going side by side. Jan Naj backing out of that one. That's a Premier driver against an Evo driver at the moment. P6 for the Swede, 65. And it's Justin Habermacher who's now putting a little bit of pressure. The two NXXs inside the top 7 of the Premier class, leaving those two Evo drivers to do it up ahead. You can see the gap that Schell has dropped Eggert by 3 seconds in just the last couple of laps. Danny Weir hasn't been able to get past Robin Aston, and so it's go time for the two drivers at the front of the Evo class. All the while, Bruno Silva putting a little bit of pressure on Andrea Muntien, who gets up one position as we head back through the hairpin once again.
Once again, there's all difficulties on the acceleration as we look back at this battle between the number 65 and one of the pro drivers. It's the Swedish Jan, not able to really make a move here into the hairpin. Looked for it a couple of times, but decided that he was going to think better of it and try it somewhere else. But maybe around the outside, maybe towards Cunningham Corner, we'll see. But looking to really make a move on the acceleration there with a little couple of kinks that you find before emerging back onto the racing line. He is fighting away with Clyde Veyer, the Maltese driver, in that Ferrari car, and they're just behind Wesley Van Ren's Scott Kostrick, who are up in just about inside the top 20 overall. And this was like a tight little battle as the sun, it really is starting to come out here in Florida. The clouds are clearing away. That's some very blue sky overhead.
Yeah, good news. I think a lot of these drivers will be hoping that it comes sooner rather than later. I wouldn't say we're quite, well, we're nowhere near slicks. I wouldn't say we're quite have a dry line either. We'll keep our eyes on that track surface, but of course you can see the spray being kicked up underneath the Porsche and also coming out of the back of that Ferrari ahead. So still a long time away from that. Both cars running a little bit wide, but it looks so Kostrick has the better of the two runs out of the corner. Good to see also everybody in chat. It's quite good support as always for Howarth and the Quartermass boys, Osberg and Naj and the Veraco team. So fingers crossed for you guys there that you get some good display from the guys that you've come to support. These two, Dara, are getting pretty close together now. Shell is just about to appear into the picture. Weir has to really start thinking about the long term, I think, here. Maybe, keep going now. Don't risk too much. Don't push too hard. And he knows that he's going to have 5 positions separating him from Andrea Muntian in P3. Wouldn't be the worst thing if Andy Chell took him. Perhaps he could just sit nicely in behind him. For the time being, though, he's doing exactly what he's needed to do. 20 minutes gone. And, not too long to go. A third of the race already complete. And it's probably only up from here as the dry conditions approach. But as I said on the formation lap, it's all about when these drivers choose to come in for dry tyres. What will be interesting is if the wet tyres outlast the fuel, drivers have to come in to refill. But if they're still on that cusp of dry or wet conditions, we could see some real risky strategies going on if some guys fancy taking that risk.
Yes, it's going to be very exciting, I think, to see how that all does play out. I am also looking forward to seeing if we almost see a difference in pattern in terms of the pace. Do the drivers that were particularly quick in the wet maybe slow down a little bit in the dry? Is it vice versa? We will have to wait and see. But for Danny Weir, I mean, we are 20 minutes into this race. Normally, here in ESR, if you're 20 minutes into a race, you're nearing the end. I mean, we have 30-minute races for the majority of the season in this series. Of course, over on a Monday night, we have 20-minute races, 15-minute races, 30-minute races as well. So to be 20 minutes in and leading the race, you're going to be feeling pretty good normally. But here, you've got 40 minutes to try and keep that up. And that's an absolute age, particularly around a track like Sebring, where we are going slower. It feels a little bit laborious when turning the car. It's going to be tough for Danny Weir to hold on, and especially with character leader Andy Chell not too far back. I think he's going to feel the pressure. I think the saving grace comes in the fact that Andre Muntian is 14 seconds back from these guys, and a little mistake really wouldn't cost them too much.
Yeah, I think Danny will have come prepared for this. I feel like, again, this is my personal approach, I would probably have done a little bit more dry practice just to know that come the end of the race, you can still be competitive. But of course, it's important to cover every aspect. Of course, the drivers would have been well aware of the conditions that they were arriving in. We've made sure this season we deliver that forecast well in advance, so these drivers knew that it were going to be wet during practice. We saw John Ludbrook capitalising clearly on a little bit of practice, perhaps. Jan Osberg just getting out of shape a little bit through that second sector, allowing the Kame GP2 machine just to snip up the inside, gets that move done. However, look at that, 13 seconds he's got now between him and Noel Brown, who was absolutely checked out of this race at the off. And to be honest, Dara, I get the impression that once the dry conditions arrive, Noel Brown's pace will probably continue at that kind of rate, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. And especially to see Noel Brown in such a lead. John Ludbrook's almost going to have to be trying to, well, I mean, A, think of things he can try and do to close the gap, but B, with Jan Osberg behind, I think I'd be looking behind me really in this situation, not to feel defeatist, but I don't know about you, Joe, if you're 13 seconds behind Robin Noel Brown, you're not really going to be able to catch him up just on the pure pace at this point. You'd feel like right now defending your P2 is probably going to be plan A, because P1 feels like a long way off.
Yeah, I would tend to agree, and also you've got to make sure that these tyres last. Now, we can still see the track is damp, but it's definitely drying out. We can see less and less spray, and that colour is starting to change. It's getting a little bit lighter. And as I said earlier as well, when you are on wet tyres on a dry track, they really do overheat and they can really lose that grip pretty quickly. So I think you're right. Ludbrook doesn't want to push the tyres too much in pursuit of a race victory, and instead should maybe look to conserve the tyres that he's got for now. Make sure that they can last up until that changeover period when we start thinking about slick tyres and make sure that when that time comes, Jan Rosberg is still in behind him. He's got a couple laps to go, more than that really. Probably another 10 minutes before we even start thinking about that. But it's definitely more about holding what he's got, making those tyres last into the pit stops, and then we can see how that all changes. Lots can happen. As we said, some guys will will bite the bullet a little bit quicker than others, and that could pay dividends, or it could cast the end to a premature night if you get that call just a couple of laps wrong.
Will be interesting to watch when the first drivers go onto a slick tyre, if they do anytime soon. Almost as they are a little bit like the guinea pigs of the session, just to see if the pace is up for them and when that pace will start to change around, and who will have that favourable advantage. Martin Koch trying to go down the inside of Liam Fraken to someone. They were close on the exit of the final corner. We saw Martin nearly go into the wall, but it all to no avail, and Liam Fraser will stay in P19 for the time being. James Hayworth not very far up the road either, as they will look to get inside the top 18 in the next few minutes, and maybe in the next couple of seconds, because that wasn't a good exit through turn 2 for James Hayworth and the Ford.
No, yeah, they're all starting to bunch up a little bit. It looks as though Liam Fraser is going to be invited onto that inside line. James hasn't exactly set up the exit as you would hope, and this might favour Martin Koch at the moment, who can just sit behind, get a good exit here. Slow on the brakes is Howarth, really lets that Mercedes through, and now he's going to get it tucked in. Hasn't been able to capitalise the 153 at the moment, but I think you'll sense a little bit of opportunity here in behind that Mustang. He's got nearly 5 seconds of a gap to the next car behind of Pete Paver, so he's got no threat in the mirrors. He's just all eyes forward on the Mercedes and the Mustang in front, and it's great to see those blue skies now pretty much all around the circuit. Justin Habermacher under pressure from Hussein Sarakadar, so this is the run down towards Sunset, still kicking up that spray. The windscreen wipers still needed there. A little bit of a move there. Oh, and that's very close. Netcode could have had an incident there between those two, but thankfully they've both made it through. Sarakadar a little bit edgy, but manages to get it through. But look at that. The traction on the exit of the corner has handed the inside line back over to Habermacher, who I'm sure will fancy his chances to stick his nose up the inside at turn 1.
Yeah, and is he going to be able to make a move stick here as they run their way through the opening corner? So many cars flying through. There's Soraka Dassler around the outside. Not going to be the ideal line, though, as Habermacher's back up the inside. There is Jan Rosberg, though, off the road. And the Swedish driver is lawn mowing the grass into turn 2, as we see just up in front. Habermacher not able to make his way through. But this is what happened to the 199. What has happened through turn 1? Has he got onto the grass on the outside? Has he dropped it mid-corner? He's dropped it mid-corner. And you can see the car already going around. Oh, I thought for a second he was going to keep it out of the wall as well, but to no avail. Yeah,
a little bit of opposite lock there, just to send it the other direction might have done him a favour, but once it's on the grass, you do become a little bit of a passenger there then. So, that has promoted Dean Sheesby on to the podium, which would be one hell of a result for Dean if he can keep that in that position. As we approach the halfway point, Robin Aston will see his teammate up there in P2 and will definitely fancy a double podium for Camé GP2, and what will be, as it stands, potentially a triple podium for the GP2 sister teams as a whole, with Noel Brown, Ludbrook and Aston. Lots and lots of action to happen until that point, though. But yeah, that'll definitely be in the mind of Aston, who will fancy his chances at getting past Sheesby, who's in a little bit of unfamiliar territory, sadly, for Dean. We see him having a lot of unfortunate spills. Fingers crossed, as the track gets drier and drier, he can start to really carve out some good lap times and stay where he is. Handed that by Osberg, but got to be there to capitalise. I think it'll be an interesting battle between these two. Only 1 second separating them, and it's a Porsche versus an XX. That's a pretty good battle I'd like to see unfold over the next 32 minutes.
Yeah, there's a lot of drivers, I think, that wouldn't mind getting themselves involved in battles, just to, if nothing else, to keep them concentrated in this race. It's easy to lose a little bit of concentration when running lap after lap on your own, especially in conditions like this, where you're using so much concentration that, you know, it almost tires you out after a little while. There's a little bit of cloud in the distance. I wonder if that's going to move over the circuit. I'm not too sure. That is where the weather was coming from and leaving towards Sunset Bend. You can see that bank of cloud over there. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. Still 32 minutes in this race. I wonder if that'll even reach us in time. Adam Waters and Klaas Janssen look like they're going to be going side by side across the start-finish line. Janssen on the outside, Waters on the inside. And what is Janssen going to do about that? Because he's got to the inside.
Yeah, get that move done nicely. He is, however... Oh, no, he's not. He's backed out. I was going to say that BMW would be invited on the inside line. Is he going to have a think about it? No. Backs out appropriately and allows Adam Waters through to take that position now up into the top 9. Looking at Edward Adcock. He is up into 15th in class, so the points are improving lap after lap for him. He's now only... Well, he's just got past Austin Grafe. I was going to say, Austin dropping down the order a little bit. Let's see how we got that one done. It looks like it was a mistake for Austin up the road because a handful of drivers got past him. There he is, sadly. That Ferrari making a mistake through turn 1 allows a handful of drivers through. Maxim Dimitrov and Liam Fraser, a little bit of a power slide there for that damaged Mercedes. These two are going to continue this battle down into the run toward the hairpin. James Howarth might be there to try and scoop up the pieces.
Yeah, and Howarth, let's see what he can do. In towards the hairpin. Inside line, he's got a couple of cars in front of him. Don't really get involved. He's got involved, and that's what's going to happen to Howarth. I mean, half-hearted to the inside just to maybe, stick a nose up if there was a collision, and it's just not worked out for him. We'll see it here. It was around the outside. He was getting overtaken, and I mean, the car in front comes down on his line as such, but difficult to really judge, who was, predominantly at fault in that moment.
Yeah, I think James was entitled to be there for sure, but also very difficult for the car in front to kind of see. I think the angle wouldn't have been the best for him to pick out that Mustang in his mirrors. In the end, turned in, made a little bit of contact, but thankfully everybody has recovered nicely, and it hasn't quite been the best night for that McLaren driver of Maxim Dimitrov. Here's an interesting one. Andy Chell in the pit lane then. Let's watch him as he enters the pit box. Is he going to lift up them jacks, or is he just coming in for a quick fuel stop?
Let's see, it's Andy Chell. Comes down pit road. I think it'd be brave not to... Well, he goes up on the jacks. There we go. The question is he going back onto wets or is he going to dries? Of course, he had that big advantage back to Muntian. I think he'll probably come out ahead of James Pallow. I can't imagine he'll be ahead of Van Rens and the 65 with Diane in. He is still up on those jacks. Interesting to see what the tyre choice is going to be, though, Joe.
Yeah, Robin Aston, he's had a crash. We'll cut back to that in a moment, but that was the man who we were just watching on, egging him on to get into the top 3. Sadly, he's went off track, had an incident, and he's now down in P6. Do they look like slicks? Let's see if we can bring up the tyre compound information. They are. Oh, no, they're not. Yes, they are. Dry tyres for Evan, Andy, and Robert. Let's ride on board then with Mr. Chell at the moment to see how these dries are feeling. I mean, there is a little bit of a dry line in a sense, but there's still those curves, the painted lines, the puddles are things that he must absolutely avoid at the moment. Let's ride on board with him for the rest of this lap and just see, as a little bit of a sense check for the other drivers, still conscious about moving over to the grippier part of the track where those marbles have been laid down. Did get it slowed down nicely. Turn in, not the best. On the curb, not the best. I think he might make this work. Let's see what his lap times are over the next couple of laps. But he's definitely set down a marker for those other drivers. And of course, it was a man who was fighting for a championship who decided to come in first. I didn't think it would be those guys who had more to lose who would take that choice. But it seems he has. And James Howarth has followed suit as well.
Yeah, and Howarth trying to, come back a little bit from that moment that he saw, or that he had, down at the hairpin. Let's see if the dry tyres are going to help him out in that. Robin Aston in the 125, coming around turn 2. What's happened to him as he works his way around the corner? Looks nice and mundane, and then that rear end steps around a little bit too far, and he has to spin it back around. Lucky enough that he's able to get going relatively easily. Could have been a lot more difficult as Shell, showing that maybe this is the time to get off of the wet tyres, because he's looking pretty racy on those dries.
Yeah, indeed. That's a maybe we spoke too soon. But I guess it was a little bit eager, to get on the power. He's got his teammate behind him now, so he knows that he's safe in behind. But that did look very, very grippy on the outside of that damaged McLaren. I think that would have been Maxim Dimitrov. Yes, it was. Something tells me, though, this could be the right call. You know, he's on them now. He's got to last the next 27 minutes, and he just will. He's managed to obviously reach, well, most of the drivers have managed to reach that cutoff between the fuel and the tyres. So now it's just about saying, well, when the fuel runs out, you kind of have no choice but to go on the dry tyres, even if you aren't the most confident that it's the right tyre to be on. You kind of just got to go for it.
Yeah, you're not going to be. You don't really have that opportunity to come back in and change off of them. So, kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place if you don't want to be on the select. It almost is a necessary evil at the moment. We'll have to see how much of an evil it does end up being, as Shell will continue on his, well, hopefully merry way, but he may not be feeling too happy about the tyres he's on right now. He'll go under the bridge and towards the hairpin, or as the sun does shine, but it just doesn't feel like it's drying out the track very much. We've had about 20 minutes now of this sun, and it just feels about as wet as it was about 10 minutes ago, visually at least.
Yeah, the spray is not so bad. It's still there. You can just about see it, but it's really almost negligible at this point. I do think, depending on how much fuel these cars have got left in them, if these drivers can get another 3, 4, 5 laps out of it, I think that will be just about good enough to see most of these guys through. Robert Noah Brown has got almost a free decision to make at this point. He's got that much of a margin now, 20 seconds before the pit stop. He can almost just sit pretty, back off, and just wait. He can ride it out. If he needs to drop some lap time in order to reserve those wet tyres, I think he'd be more than happy to do that. Take no risk in coming out too early. Interesting question, though. I wonder if any of these guys are aware. I know some of these overlays tell you which compounds people are on, but I'm not sure if you'll be able to see the likes of Chell and Smith and Howarth, who've made that call already. As far as the leaders might be concerned, they might think everyone's still on the wets.
Yeah, difficult to really judge what they know at this stage, because they will probably have some of the drivers, at least a couple of, an engineer talking to them about what's going on in the race, and maybe will be given or being fed some of this information, but there's no guarantee of that, and not everybody will have that for themselves. So, yeah, I think varying amounts of information are going to be being picked up by drivers for the time being, as Osberg looking for an outside line as they run their way through turn 3. He's fighting with Scott Kostrick over P7 overall, but Osberg going to have to stay where he is. Of course, after that spin down at turn 1, he's now fighting over P7. I think he'd rather be fighting P2, as that's, well, he was in P3, wasn't he, before the spin. She'sby promoted to that position, but not really doing too much with it just for the time being.
Yeah, reminder, of course, everybody, that this is, of course, the B split of the GT3 Season 7 ESR Championship, and there is, of course, the A split being broadcast live as we speak over on Chaz Draycott Media. I've just called in to Chaz's broadcast to take a look at how their tyre strategy is going, and it's pretty much all the same. We've got 4 drivers in the Elite Division, Van Gortel, Breitenbach, Daniels and Fairley, who've come into the pit lane to take dry tyres. Who's that going straight on there? Was that Jan Noj? No, it wasn't Jan Noj. Someone else, maybe a blue flag driver, Ryan Blackie, Robert Savage perhaps, one of those drivers going straight on. There he is, rejoining ahead. And yeah, back to the A-split. In that pro category, it's Van der Water, Fretwell, Breitenbach, Stubb and Darby, I think that says, who've all come onto the dry tyres. So, more or less the same. Sarika Desler is in, Aston is in, Koch and Coulin. I'm sorry, not Coulin. But yeah, more and more drivers are now feeling that now is the time to get over to that slick compound. Let's see how Sarika Desler is getting on. Just in behind this pack. Lap times. Andy Chell, last lap time was a 2:16.6. Robin O'Brown's last lap time, a 14.7. So, obviously that's class and ability in question as well. But that's about the best. Is that really the best comparison? Maybe someone like Austin Grave would be a good comparison. 2:16.9 to Andy Chell's 2:15.7. It's hard to tell, isn't it, with differences of quality. But I think he's definitely in the right decision, and that could really pay dividends over the next couple of laps with these guys coming in now. More and more drivers inside the pit lane. Oh my god. I wasn't looking.
Yeah.
Was that Sarika Desler?
Yeah, that was... Well, that got close. I thought he was
lane.
going straight to the barrier. Oh dear. Oh, Clyde Veyer. Oh no. That may be a little bit more damage on the car than he would have hoped for coming into the pit lane. But for Hurst there, going into the final turn, I really thought he was heading straight for a speed date with the barrier there. I'm not sure if he would have stayed very long and paid the bill, but it wasn't looking like it was a very good position for him to be in. He somehow managed to survive, but just trying to get used to those dry tyres clearly as he gets close once again to the driver in front, which is of course Danny Weir, but both of these guys now on the dries, and interesting to see how they can both cope with them at the moment.
Yeah, of course, Danny now dropping outside the top 3 temporarily, while Bertinkat and Jan Naj are yet to come in. Sarka Desla up the inside, clearly got a little bit more grip on those slicks than the 55 does at the time being, but it's really only a matter of time before the top 12 in the field start to come in to make that change. I'm really trying to make some good comparative lap times. Danny Weir is yet to set a lap time on those dries because the last lap was in the pit lane, but I'm really keen to start seeing how these times are comparing once we get some good numbers in. Robin O'Brien leader into the pit lane, then of course he will change tyres again. He will come out, I'm sure, significantly ahead of Ludbrook, who's the car just pulling into the pit box behind him actually. We'll see how soon Robin O'Brien gets on at the front. Temporarily though, Dean Shisby leads the field, the 152.
Yeah, interesting now that we've got Shisby leading. Of course, he will have to come down pit road at some point. I don't necessarily think that staying out for as long as he can is going to be a bad idea. Spray very much has reduced though. Almost negligible now, the amount of spray that is on the circuit, barely getting up to about half the height of the car, and not going very far either. Of course, we'll see what Robin L. Brown can do in comparison to Dean Sheesby. This could be the only chance that Sheesby has to close the gap. I doubt he'll be able to close a gap of the magnitude that we saw Robin L. Brown be able to build up, but got to have a little bit of hope, don't you? Still 20 minutes to go, still, enough time, but, I mean, we're talking about 9 laps, 8 laps. It's not a long time at all.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Well, that's not pretty viewing, and it won't be best pleased for Mr. Ludbrook, who's come out of the pit lane on the tried tyre, and has instantly, as you said earlier, Dara, he did have a speed date with that barrier, got himself going quickly, but that's not the kind of thing that you want to do to set yourself to fill yourself with confidence when you get onto a new tyre compound. That's going to have cost him a little bit of time at the moment. He's actually dropped behind. Okay, no, he hasn't. All the cars ahead, apart from Noel Brown, of course, are yet to pit, but that front end of that Porsche has seen better days, and yeah, it's not going to make that transition any easier for the 114.
Yeah, Ludbrook, he's had a difficult couple of moments in this race. He's had some great pace, but he's just had those little moments that have, well, they feel like they're going to cost him quite big this evening. Maybe even for a top 5, well, maybe for a podium finish, at least maybe a P2. We'll keep an eye on that. As Dean Sheesby does come down into the pit lane, will Matthias Eggert follow? Will he take the lead of the race? We'll wait to see on that one. But again, 19 minutes to go. Eggert does come down pit road. With 19 minutes to go, and the lap time still being, 2.25 minutes, as Noel Brown comes around the final corner, I only think he's got 8 laps left here, Joe. I mean, that feels like it's going to go slowly, of course, because it's still 18 minutes and 44 seconds, but there's not many overtaking opportunities left for some of these drivers to get them done, to get these moves done, and not much time for drivers to gain some time on other drivers, realistically.
No, I know, you're right, and I'm thinking we're still seeing that spray, so it's obviously not completely dry at the moment. This is really all about the skill. It would be obviously a terrible decision for some of these drivers to stay on those wet tyres. They'll just be absolutely destroyed by the time they reach the checkered flag. Looking, those three, Janssen, Kostrick and Osberg, still on the wet tyres, and they've just started a fresh lap. So they're going again. Danny Weir somehow has shifted the order around. He crosses onto the start-finish line. Noel Brown still leads the race. I'm not quite sure how the two classes have just swapped around, but look at that. Is that accurate? Danny Weir, 1 pit stop. Andy Chell, 1 pit stop. Something's happened to Chell then, because he's dropped 5 seconds off the back of Danny Weir, so it's looking quite comfortable at the moment then for the 55 to try and convert that win, crossing into the final quarter of the race very shortly. And yeah, he can't even see. Yeah, he can. There he is. The Porsche in the background, just about in the mirrors of the 55. But We're in dry conditions, dry tyres. Let's see if these guys can share similar style as what we've seen in that first half of the session. Yeah, looking pretty good at the moment for Danny Weir, and I'm really concerned about Janssen, Kostrick and Osberg still out there on the wets.
Yeah, and it's interesting, I think, to see drivers sticking it out on. I mean, the fact that they haven't come into the pit lane is interesting enough, considering that there's only 17 minutes of the race left to go. But it's interesting. I mean, clearly there's some thinking behind it. Maybe they think it's still quicker, and it may be by a little bit. Maybe they're not confident going to the dries just yet. But we'll have to see what the lap times are between Janssen and Noel Brown. I don't feel like Janssen's gaining on Noel Brown. I feel like he's losing quite a lot of the time, and I know that could be down to a little bit of freshness of the tyres ability-wise, but Noel Brown's gone for a 2-minute 6.488. Janssen's going to be absolutely nowhere near that. He's going to come down pit road this time round. It's a shame, really, because we don't really get to see the comparison. Rob Mackay on the dries has gone for a 2.7.3. It's far quicker, it seems, on the dry tyres than the wet. Where's Scott Kostrick going through? Is he coming to the pit lane as well? Wow. No, he's on the circuit. What's his lap time? So a 2.6 for Noel Brown, 12. A 2.12 for Kostrick. Surely it's time to come in.
Yeah, just dropping time really there unnecessarily. And of course, let's remember Andy Churl, the first man on those. Danny Weir's had an incident. Danny Weir has crashed. And is he out? No, he's still on the track, but he has lost the lead of the race. Coming around the final corner, got a little bit trigger happy. That's such a shame for Danny there. It looked actually as though he had quite a bit of excess room there on the left-hand side. Was never really at risk of running into that barrier. Just got on the power a little bit too eagerly. A bit of oversteer, and he's in the barrier. Let's see where he is on the circuit. Andy Chell back in the pit lane. It's all kicking off.
Yeah, no, I don't really know where to look at this point. Chell back in on the dry tyres. I mean, he's not going back to the wets, is he? Surely. The car's not being lifted up, that's for sure. Did he underfuel the car?
Well, that's one hell of a crabby car. Yeah. So, let's see then. He passed Danny Weir here. The car looks fine to me. Oh, he's going to hit that barrier. Oh, dear me. So the two leaders, well, I mean, that's the best position that you would want to find yourself, frankly, right on the pit entry. Yeah, the two race leaders in the Evo class suffering a similar fate. Danny would have been cursing in the cockpit, I'm sure, at that mistake, handing over the race victory. But yeah, he only lost it for 5 seconds, and then he saw Chell going straight past him.
Yeah, it's not the ideal scenario in terms of how the crash occurred, but I mean, to be where you are, not too bad. I mean, Danny Weir's car's looking a little bit worse for wear. I don't think Luigi would allow that to go out onto the circuit, quite frankly, but it is. And he will carry on and see if he can hold it through in the final 14 minutes. He's got a 14-second advantage still. It's just going to be a case of how long can he hold on to that, realistically. He's got Kostrick into the pit lane, really last of the, with respect, relevant runners at the front of this race to come into the box from the wet tyres. And it means that everybody now in the front 16, on the lead lap even, is going to be on that dry tyre. 10 karts still on the wet. But I think that domino should fall this lap, surely, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you'd think. I mean, for example, even if Evan Main, P15 in the Premier Class, P20 on the circuit, his last lap was... where's he gone? I've just lost him on the timing sheet. His last lap was a 9, just shy of a 2-minute 10. Burton Cat, mid 2:15s, and that's not what you would want to see. He's just about to keep it out of the barrier, and all the cars come down now. Is that the grip that we talked about? Have those wet tyres overheated a little bit on these dry conditions, as when he's come to turn in, there's just nothing there to keep the car in a straight line. He's going to have to come in now and change those tyres, surely. Yes, he does. Comes into the pit lane, one of the last drivers in a decent point scoring position to make that change. Something would tell me a driver of Bert's ability, you know, bearing in mind he's fighting in a way for a championship inside the top 3, only 25 points or so away from the championship leader. Surely he could have come in the best part of, what, when did Andy Chell come in? 10 laps ago?
I'd have thought so. A fair while. It's a big gap between drivers coming into the pit lane in conditions that felt like they were dry for quite a while. Yeah. a bit of a weird one, really, but what can you do? What can you do? These are the kind of races where you never really know where to look. Drivers are always trying to guess what the right strategy is. I mean, of course, for a couple of drivers who've had to come into the pit lane twice, notably Andy Schell, it's not necessarily intended. But you can never guarantee that you'll only make that one stop, and that when you make the one stop, it's going to be the right decision and the right time to do so. And that, I think, is why we've seen a bit of a shake-up in the order. I mean, Sainz Alcadesta being up into the top 3 is surprising in itself, but he's going fastest, 2:4.4, even with the moment that he had towards the final corner a few laps ago, shows that he's really on track for maybe getting up to the top 2 here.
Something that has gone under the radar, which I'm trying to find now, is Edward Adcock back down into P27 in class, P38 on the road, under blue flags, just crossing over. In fact, sorry, he's not even under blue flags. He dropped out of the race about 7 laps ago on lap 14. Let me see if I can find what happened to him, because that's quite an important incident in terms of the championship, which of course opens the door for Noel Brown a little bit to capitalise on these 100 points tonight, albeit he will of course drop this round after dropping so many points. 63 for Adcock dropped already this season. That will then be exchanged in this round, where you'll drop 0. So swings and roundabouts. Noel Brown will be pleased to, of course, bring home that margin. But yeah, something's definitely gone wrong for the championship protagonist. He's out the race, and he has been. For 6 or 7 laps, we've missed that in all the carnage.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot we realise that we've missed because of everything that's been going on. Drivers consistently moving position, but you can never really tell if that's a pit stop or someone's gone around. It's difficult to really judge, but it's some really good performances tonight from drivers who have just been able to quietly make their way through the field. I mean, Andre in the Evo class looking comfortable in P2 at the moment, putting in a great display in the number 7. We haven't really talked about him much because he's just managed to keep his nose clean and put some good pace in, and that is why he finds himself where he does. Noel Brown, I think we're going to get an extra lap in now because we're lapping a little bit faster, and I think Noel Brown will just about cross the line in time. He will have the prerogative whether he wants to stop this race a lap early, which I'll be honest, I wouldn't mind doing myself. But he's going to be able to have that choice. What's happened to Austin Graff, though, as he exits Cunningham Corner?
No, I was actually trying to get a look at Adcock. That was the car on the inside there. This is when he entered the pit lane. Looks okay. He's gone off the circuit, and then he just recessed the pit lane. So, doesn't look like it was a major incident. Nothing on the timing tower to suggest that, but that was the moment where it all went a little bit wrong for him. Sarika Desler might fancy his chances at gaining one more position. This is the best battle that we've got on the circuit. Noel Brown, 30 seconds clear. Danny Weir, 11.5 seconds clear. Jan Neusch might fancy his chances at getting inside the top 3. We're right on board with Sarika Desler for the moment. However, Jan Osberg has just had an incident on the circuit, so I'm not sure if that's demoted him into P3. Yes, it has. He's now 9 seconds off the back of Muntian, so a mistake for the Swedish driver there. But heating up between Schisby and Sarika Desler as we enter the final 9 minutes, and as we know, Sarika Desler is someone who always fancies his chances at making a move, and if he can sniff a P2, which could be his best position of the season, I'm not quite sure, he'll definitely take that opportunity if it arises.
No doubt about it. Especially at this stage of the race, every opportunity you have to take. You can't really go for a half-hearted move. You have to commit to the move, and even if you go deep and lose the position once again, at least you've tried. At least you're showing that you're willing. You can't throw up or give up opportunities at this stage of the race. If you give up the opportunities and then not make the move in the end, you're going to always be thinking, well, what if I did this? What if I did that? And it's never a nice feeling as a driver, that's for sure. Noel Brown, 2-minute 2 means we are going to have now 5 laps to go in this race. He's going to cross the line with only a few seconds left on the clock, but with seconds left on the clock to give us a 5th lap rather than keeping it at 4. And that could give the Sainz Alcadesta a little bit more time to try and make that move on Dean Sheesby. He's going to be hoping that there's one extra lap. And I think Sheesby's going to be hoping that Noel Brown shortens the race by the 1. Yeah,
Noel Brown into the 2-minute 2s. I'm not sure if you just said that there, Dara, but beats Hussein's fastest lap previously of a 0.3. Gets it now into the 2s. So Noel Brown a second quicker than the man sharing the podium with him as things stand. And interestingly there, it might have been just a simple configuration mistake, but there are still a couple of drivers out there on those wet tyres. We saw Anthony Flamel and Simon Wareham, the 2 drivers in the Pro class, in the Premier class, sorry, still on those wet tyres, perhaps. They came into the pit lane, forgot to set things up correctly. I've been there before. It happens. And now maybe they think, well, let's just deal with it and finish the race. Sadly, though, neither of them inside a point-scoring position. Anthony, 7 seconds away from that position, so maybe for them at the moment, it's just a case of trying to bring it to the checkered flag and, yeah, run the whole race on wet tyres. I mean, we're here now. Why not finish it like this?
Yeah, I think there's a few drivers who'll be thinking about it in that way. Dimitrov and Kostrick fighting it out as Dimitrov makes his way through across the start-finish line on the 101. You can see he's gained 7/10 on that lap compared to Kostrick, who had a bit of a nightmare lap, lost 4 seconds to the cars behind in the likes of Fraser and Hayworth. So Kostrick going backwards, Waters going off the circuit momentarily at the exit of turn 1, but won't be able to pressure yet from Dimitrov as they make their way through turn 3, but time really is ticking away now. Minutes are elapsing, moves have to be done soon. Maxim Dimitrov nearly going for it through there, not something you'd expect to see from the Bulgarian, as we see a couple of drivers still struggling on these drives.
Yeah, big wobble there for the McLaren driver as he watches the 2 Porsches, goes for it. That must be a blue flag on the outside line, gets out the way nicely, down into first gear, chasing that massive rear wing on the back of that Porsche. There has been another incident for Bertin Kat and John Ludbrook, sadly. So those 2 guys dropping down the order. Jan Osberg crashed again. That's his night over. This has just happened. Let's see. Oh, well, that car, once again, that Porsche looks particularly strange when it crabs around the circuit. He's picked up some serious damage. Look at that rear right, completely out of alignment. Does a nice little pivot and gets himself out the way nice and quickly. Let's see what happened to Ludbrook as well while we're here. Car doesn't look particularly damaged as such. On the brakes, turns in, loses the rear, spins around. It's nice and simple mistake to make. But those 2, their night is now over. I'm not sure where Osberg was prior to that incident and who has been the beneficiary of that mistake. But the top 6, as it stands though, Noah Brown, Schiesby, Sarika Desler, Eggert, Habermacher and Ludbrook there, still inside the top 6. And the gap's starting to fan out a little bit at the moment. Dimitrov might fancy his chances up the inside at Sunset. Waters goes wide and deep and off the circuit and into the barrier there. Just the presence alone of Maxim Dimitrov was enough to put that Porsche off and into the barrier.
What was that line from Adam there? Sorry, that was bad, wasn't it? From the 169. He won't be pleased about that, that's for sure. Hopefully there's not too much damage on the car. He's gone around again. He's not coming to the pit lane, which would suggest that he should be okay. Austin Graf, though, wouldn't mind getting a little bit closer. And I mean, 6 seconds quicker on that last lap and 6 seconds behind would suggest that he's got a chance. But that was with Adam Waters' big mistake at the final corner, so we will keep an eye on that. 3 to go, though, for these guys. Dimitrov, I mean, he'll have dreams about maybe getting up into P7, but Klaus Janssen is running so lonely in this race that I don't think there's going to be much chance of that unless Klaus loses all concentration and finds himself in the barrier somewhere. James Hayworth going for a move in P10 for the time being, trying to change that. Nearly doing that, but not quite into the hairpin this time around.
Yeah, a handful of points on offer for these guys battling in and around that top 10. Most of the places inside the Evo class, more or less, all said and done. Quite significant gaps separating all of those guys. But this little battle here between Dimitrov, Kostic and Howarth still could matter quite a bit, of course. Double points on offer from our usual scoring positions inside our 30-minute races. So, to get up from P10 to P8 will give quite a big advantage for these guys in their fight toward the top of their championships. At the moment, it's pressure on Dimitrov, weight off the shoulders of Howarth. He can just look forward, try to set after these 2. Of course, Liam Fraser in behind just there coming into picture, but I think Howarth will fancy his chances at trying to get a good run down this kind of section. It looks like he's done exactly that, Dara. Well, maybe not, actually. But yeah, he'll fancy his chances into the final 3 minutes then. Car just letting these drivers past on that inside line. Is he going to think about it, Howarth? I think it would be optimistic if he did. Gives Kostrick something to think about. A wobble there in behind that Porsche for Maxim Dimitrov. That could create some sort of 3 wide scenario perhaps for these drivers heading into turn 1. A huge wobble for Dimitrov. He's lost a handful of places there through Sunset Bend. It's going to be Kostrick and Howarth going it one by one into the first corner. Who's going to come out on top? Early on the brakes goes Howarth. Around the outside goes Kostrick. This battle's probably going to continue down toward the hairpin.
Yeah,
Maybe
Hammers
not.
on the inside should have it done. Kostrick is not going to be able to fight that one as they work their way through. And James Howarth in the 154 in that Ford. He had a couple of issues, didn't he, earlier on, but he's up into P8 and he may try and go after Janssen ahead. But again, that's going to be, you know, it's somewhat of a pipe dream in the closing couple of minutes here. Noel Brown, I believe, yes, just starting what will be his penultimate lap of the race. So actually, we've got 3 more to go for Hayworth, Kostrick and Fraser. Noel Brown, of course, will have the prerogative to make this the final lap if he wants to, because he's got a 26, 27-second lead. He doesn't have to go around one more time, but if he wants to, he absolutely can.
Yeah, we'll keep our eyes on that just in case he drops off that pace a little bit. He'll get an impression as to the lap time he's going to set when he comes out of the penultimate corner, and then coming through Sunset, if he just wants to let off by a couple of seconds, he could definitely do some of these guys a little bit of a favour. But as you say rightly, Dara, the gap that he's built up definitely gives him that choice. Looking at the standings in the A split over on Chaz Draycott Media, the battle for the elite class still rages on by under a second. However, the gap in the pro class over 32 seconds. Bobby Trunley and Matt Hoyland, those 2 drivers. So it looks like Bobby has outdone Robin on this occasion. 26 seconds versus 32 seconds, but in the 2 different classes then. Liam Fraser, Scott Kostrick off the road and wide. I missed that as I was looking at the timing sheet, but Liam Fraser has, we saw him in the back of the picture while Dimitrov, Kostrick and Howarth battled away, and it was the 2 drivers at the back of that pack who now lead ahead inside the top 8.
Yeah, definitely going to be an interesting one to see. Now, Brown, he is losing time to Dean Sheesby here. That gap is now under 26 seconds, but I wonder if that is Noel Brown backing off or whether he's just cruising a little bit towards the end of the race. We will see. He's got 30 seconds. I mean, it's going to come down to a couple of seconds anyway. Let's see what he does. The 1-2-1. I mean, he's driven an absolutely stellar race, hasn't he? It never really looked like anybody was going to be able to catch him after pulling that gap to about 12 seconds in the opening 15 minutes, and he's just increased lap after lap. I think we're going to get the one more lap here because he doesn't look like he's slowing up too much in the final corner.
Yeah, I was just about to say the same thing. It's going to be so close. 5 or 6 seconds are going to be all that it separates. It is the white flag. We are going to go for just one more circuit here of Sebring. Jan Naj has had an incident right toward the end of his race. Hasn't sadly been the best night out for our 2 Swedish drivers, and he spins it quite high speed. Wow, that's a big impact into the barrier. Let's watch that again from his onboard. It seemed like he was carrying so much speed through turn 1.
Yeah, let's see. 6th gear. Did he even shift down?
Ooh.
No.
Looked like late on the brakes, and yeah, just never really gripped it up, sadly. And that is one hell of an impact. Doing that in real life, that would be a sore one.
Yeah, not ideal at all as Evan Main. That got close down into the hairpin between himself and Austin Graff. That could have been absolute tears for the 2 of these guys as they work their way through out towards Cunningham Corner and Tower Turn. I don't know. I think these guys may have one more lap after this. I'm not sure where Robin O'Brien is, but I think these guys are ahead of him, which means that they're going to cross the line after about an hour and a minute and a half and still have another lap to do. So nearly an hour, 4 minutes for these guys at the back of the field to race out this one.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Robin is 27 and a half laps. These guys 26 and 2/3. So they're going to cross the line and then go once again. Not quite under blue flag. So this battle will continue on for the time being. James Pallow in behind is the next driver who might fancy his chances to get past while these 2 battle ahead. But the gap has just opened up ever so slightly. Klaas Janssen, he's reset to the pit lane right at the end of the race. His session is over. He was somewhere around the top 8 when he came into the pits. He is going to rejoin the circuit, and I think he's going to come out ahead of Adam Watters, who is steaming now down toward turn 1 inside this pack. It's going to be a pretty tricky pit exit for that BMW, who's going to slot in behind that second of the 2 Porsches, and he is going to be able to finish that race. Is that the battle in behind? Yes, it is, that we saw earlier. Wesley Van Ren under pressure from James Howarth, out of class. Not going to do too much to stop that one. Robin Noel Brown has crossed the line to win the race. What a dominant performance that was. In the end, 25 seconds the difference between Dean Sheesby and Robin Noel Brown. Congratulations to the championship leader. What a fine job that was, and what a fine race it's been by this man, who I think I'd be safe to say is his best finish of the season, and with a feature race to do it, What a great haul of points for the 152. Ahead of Sarah Kadesla, who again, correct me if I'm wrong, Dara, I don't have them on my sheet, could be his best result of the season as well. If not, definitely up there and definitely good to score points on the podium in what is a double point feature race.
Yeah, fantastic result for so many of these drivers. It's been a really class display from the likes of Noel Brown, from the likes of Dean Sheesby. I mean, Sheesby, just to keep it in P2 after the pressure from Sarah Kadesla towards the end of the race really was impressive. And for Danny Weird to come around the final corner now, it's going to feel fantastic for him. I mean, he's been so good this season, up towards the front of the field in the Evo, race after race. And that win coming to him once again at Sebring. What a race it's been.
Yeah, congrats, Danny. We didn't miss it this time, and you've converted maximum points. 100 points on the board for the DXT Luna 55 machine. He'll be saying ka-chow as he crosses the line, no doubt in my mind. Andrea Muntien will take P2. Then it's a little bit of a gap down to Wesley Van Ren in that Ferrari. What a great finish for him as well. P7 in the championship, his best joint finish of the season. He's had, in fact, his positions so far this season, P5 and P3. He's either not started the race, not finished the race, or he's finished inside the top 5. So pretty consistent for Mr. Van Ren at the moment. He finishes ahead of James Pallett in the top 5. Then it's Sander Tabbers with like 10 cars in between them at the moment. So great effort by the guys on the podium, and that is a job well done for all of those drivers finishing a race on such a difficult circuit in those conditions. I think all in all, Dara, that was a very successful session.
Yeah, great race as well. So many drivers battling it out right towards the end of the race. A couple of moments, particularly in those in those wet conditions to start the race. As it dried up, some of the drivers, changed strategies. It worked out well for them. It is great to see these guys race so well around a circuit like this, and sets us up for a great ending to the season.
It absolutely does. So then we can bring you the race results as always ahead of our driver interviews, and I'm sure we'll have some good conversations with the guys who finished toward the front of their classes upcoming after this. So Robin Noel Brown, the 121 for Suma GP2 Porsche, continues his fine run toward the front of the championship. Had a pretty poor outing last week, and that is his first race win since the 3rd and 4th rounds. So congratulations to Mr. Noel Brown. He finished 25 seconds ahead of Dean Sheesby for Moonshiner Racing Club in what will be a very, very thoroughly satisfying P2 finish for the 152. Hossein Sarakadesla will be next to round out the podium inside the Premier class for the second of the Suma GP2 drivers, this time Suma GP2 NSX. Matthias Eggert and Justin Habermacher go about their business nicely, the two Hansa drivers finishing inside the top 5. Great result for their team championship hopes. John Ludbrook and James Howarth will finish ahead of Scott Kostrick inside the top 8, with Klaas Janssen and Evan Main rounding out the top 10. It'll be Pete Paeva and Adam Waters inside the top 12 ahead of Rob Gregg and Austin Grave in the top 14. Liam Fraser in P15. Then we reach the cars that were lapped by the checkered flag. Maxim Dimitrov, Martin Koch, Robin Aston and Brandon Smith ahead of Henry Coolan inside the top 20. It'll be Ryan Blackie and Anthony Flamel, the man who I believe finished the race on that wet tyre compound, as we cycle through. Simon Wareham inside the top 23. Jan Osberg should pick up the points, but sadly for Rob Mackay, Clyde Veyer, Eddie Adcock, Bruno Silva, Mark Van Mulken and Adam Baker, they will finish too far away from the checkered flag, if not finishing at all, and will therefore not score any points. And of course, Ryan Blackie, Anthony Flamel, Simon Wareham and Jan Osberg, even if they did qualify for points, finished outside of that. It's quite a rare occasion in the SR, actually, that we have drivers finishing outside the available points. Bodes well for the championship, but it'll be Henry Coolan taking that final point on offer in P20.
Over in the Evo standings, a few less drivers, but not too much less action. Danny Weir was the winner in the end in that Lightning McQueen car. 55 was your winner. Andre Muntian, quiet race for him in the end, but was able to pick up a very solid P2. And Wesley Van Ren it was who rounded out the podium. James Pallow, the man from Jersey, finished in P4 ahead of Sander Tabbers, who rounded out our top 5. It was Jan Noj and Robert Savage 6th and 7th, and Bert Tenkat as well in the top 8, who were 1 lap down. Nicky Meering was 9th, 2 laps down. Andy Schell, after his crash towards the end of the race, was 5 laps down in 10th. Louis Plath, I should say, P11 for the German, He was also 5 laps down. And for Owen Seward, 25 laps down. 25 laps down, I should say. He didn't really get going in this race. Shame for Seward, but I'm sure he'll be back in 7 days' time.
He absolutely will. He absolutely will. So there we go. We're going to bring in a couple of these guys now, and it looks like Danny Weir is, of course, waiting to speak with us. So we'll cut to him in just a moment, and we'll see how he found that session. I'm sure he'll be absolutely delighted to bring home those points. Let's just get him up on the screen now. And Dara, we are good to go.
Drag Danny in immediately then. Danny, welcome in. Can you hear us?
I can hear you fine.
Good stuff, Danny. Well, of course, we didn't think it would be too long until you joined us back in the comms booth yet again for another race victory. It's going pretty well for you in both of these classes, but that will take you 6 podiums in a row and 2 race wins in this division in a row. So talk us through that generally, and also talk us through the conditions. You had a little bit of pressure from Andy Chell earlier on toward the end of that wet stint, but in the end, mate, you came out on top by quite a margin.
So yeah, so the conditions are ridiculous. Like, it was so hard to kind of work out what line was the better one. I've done a lot of practice over the last week, just in different types of wetness, best put it. And so I kind of knew what rough pace I should be doing. Qualifying went really well, although I did get booted out because my system crashed. But I managed to get P1 in that, so that was really good. And then yeah, Andy Chell wasn't making a mistake. Like, he was on me the whole time. Like, that gap was constant, and I thought, okay, I'm trying to get a couple of cars between us, and then he's got through them, and I'm like, oh no. And then on the last corner on Sunset, I lost it. I thought, oh, there we go, there's my race over. And look in the mirror, and there's Andy doing the exact same thing. And I panicked, and I thought, oh my god, if I hit him as he reacted to me. But yeah, luckily enough, no damage. And I think I found a bit of a cheat code with that Porsche with no bumper. Really works well.
But Danny, for you, I mean, a great run of results. I mean, this puts you in a really, really good position going forward, particularly in that championship. Of course, coming into this race, you were sitting relatively well up in P4. With the win tonight, you'll definitely overtake Tankar, Andy Shell as well. I think you'll probably even be in the championship lead, actually. Where do you think this leaves you going to the final 4 rounds, particularly on the confidence level?
Well, no pressure or anything. So the confidence is high at the minute. Like, honestly, it's a really stupid saying that it's actually 100% true. Like, practice does make perfect, and I'm genuinely actually putting time into it. Like, I'm enjoying the racing again. I'm back in the Porsche, and that's what's keeping me consistent. It's just enjoying the race. Whereas when I was last season in the Audi, not having good race results even after practicing, you don't want to get on and practice. Whereas now, I'm actually really enjoying it. I'm feeling the car a lot more. And yeah, I'm just said it's a great feeling to constantly come back in and said, 6 on the trot, podiums and two race wins. I wouldn't expect it from the start of the season. So this is a bit of a surprise. I'm just going to try and keep it up best I can and see if I can annoy you all every week.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how you think about the drop rounds, of course, Danny. I was just about to say, you came into the season and it wasn't looking very good. Obviously, a P13, a couple of DNFs. Since then, though, it's been about as good as you could ask for. Obviously, that round early in the season will be your drop round. I think Zolder will be the one. And so does that kind of, yes, you don't have any points to drop back on, but I guess at this point, you just think, well, let's just race then, you know? The points that you have on the board are the points that you're going to stay with, probably, for the rest of the season. And so at least you know exactly where you're going to end up. And as Dara rightly says, we'll do the maths, but you could really, really be in contention. Chell didn't have a good finish. Abbott's didn't turn up. Burton Cat made a few mistakes. And you brought home maximum points.
Yes, and it does really help, obviously, working out what the points around me are, what I'm doing. At the moment, it's just focusing on myself. Like, it's good to know, obviously, that I say that good to know, but it's good to know that rivals around me aren't having the best of finishes. But it could be just it could be just track related. I seem to be pretty good in the wet. I'm just gonna take it race by race, and then if I can keep this up, then I will, and I'll obviously start to keep an eye on what the others are doing a bit more. But it's obviously so hard because you've got so many quick drivers in that, and like you said, like Andy Chell didn't have a good race, but he was there. But you've also got so if I say his name wrong, Andrei Andre.
Montine.
Yeah, Montine, and he's very quick, and he's always there to pick up the pace if you make a mistake. There's a lot of quick drivers in this group, so it's just taking it race by race and just hoping that you come out on top, really.
Good stuff, Danny. Well, always nice to speak to you, and obviously congratulations. So I'll give you an opportunity to give a shout out to you guys as always, and then we'll pass on to somebody else.
Yeah, thank you guys for streaming. Obviously, big shout out to obviously the DXT boys. Also, shout out to Dean as well. Dean's been in our sessions every now and then, and we're having a bit of like practice together, so giving us a few pointers. So yeah, shout out to Dean as well.
Good stuff, mate. Well, thanks for joining us, and yeah, fingers crossed your Monday form continues, and the Thursday form. Who knows what's going to happen over the next month?
Yeah, who knows?
Good stuff, mate.
Well,
thanks for joining us. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll speak to you next week.
Yeah, see you later, lads.
Thanks, Danny. Danny Weir, then race winner in the Evo class. It's good that we are able to also speak to the other race winner in the Premier class here this evening. It was Robin Noel Brown who won the race by quite a distance. Robin, welcome in. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, Jake.
Good stuff, Robin. Well, welcome in to the booth, and of course, I mean, what more needs to be said about that? I think your preparation must have been pretty good. You crossed the line in the end, over 25 seconds away from the nearest rival. Got away off the line well, led the opening stage, got the pit stop right. Just talk us through it. Talk us through the preparation. Talk us through how the car felt. Didn't look like you really had any concerning moments throughout that session tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Yeah, it's the prep-wise. A lot of the practice I'd done, the track was actually quite a lot drier than it was particularly in the practice and the quali session, and even for the start of the race. So it was a bit of a shock getting into practice and losing sort of 5-6 seconds of pace compared to what I'd had in my test sessions. So, but yeah, obviously it was the same for everybody. So came good in the end in qualifying, and then in the race, yeah, the first bit I just thought, I thought Jan was going to be quick. Knew Jan was going to be quick in the wet from the race at Virginia. So I thought, well, try and build a gap to everybody else, try and take him with me and stay out in front, and then see what happens in the pit stops. But he didn't seem to have quite the same level of pace as he did at Virginia. So managed to build up a bit of a gap, and then started thinking about tyres, and I was absolutely shredding the rears around that sort of double left-hander. And so I needed to sort of back off a little bit, but still wanted to build up enough space. So yeah, it was all right. Then waited for other people to go into the pits to see what was happening there, and one of my teammates, Robin Aston, went in first. He was a bit lower down and said the slicks were all right, so didn't need to take a risk pitting early or anything like that.
Yeah, and Robin, I mean, this pace that you've shown the last few weeks really has been scintillating. I mean, looking forward, of course, next week we're heading to COTA. It's different in terms of characteristics. Is that a circuit you're looking forward to? Maybe keep up the momentum?
Yeah, COTA is a really challenging track, and needs a lot of practice because you get slightly offline and it screws up 3 or 4 corners in a row. So you really need to get a lot of practice in there. I do love the circuit though. It's one of my favourites. You know, you have time to make a cup of tea down the back straight as well, which is nice to get a bit of a rest. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and hoping that the pace continues. But yeah, I had a bit of a frustrating time at Long Beach and things last week. So it's nice to get out there and be back near the front.
I was going to say just there, Robin, as well, you know, you've had such a good run of form, more or less, yet to finish outside the top 7, aside from that result last time at Long Beach, which of course has been dropped from the standings. So, yes, you have that cushion. Ironically, it's you and the championship rival, Lavetti Adcock, who have you've got 45 points, he had 63 points to drop back on, and everybody else in the class has no more than 5 to drop back on. So you guys have obviously been leading the way at the front of the field. And does that play on your mind at all, knowing that you can sort of afford to just, you know, have one error, I guess, if it comes to it over the next couple of rounds? Or are you just keen to really nail in last 4 weeks of the championship, try and take Eddie all the way?
Yeah, I think the latter, definitely. 45 points isn't that many in the scheme of things compared to what the people around me in the championship score week on week, really, to fall back on. So I'm hoping that I'm not having to use them by the end of the season. But yeah, I'm mostly just looking forward, trying to be as quick as I can, and it's great to be racing with Eddie and everybody else, and keeping me having to work hard to keep the pace up. What happened to Eddie tonight? I didn't see what happened to him.
When you see the stream back, mate, there was a lot that went on. I'm trying to think where it went wrong for him. Did he just spin out of his own accord? I'm not going to try and remember, mate, because frankly I can't. But in the end, he finished the race quite a few laps. I think he only finished the first 10 laps, and then he was in the pit lane. So anyway, yeah, we'll have to see back on the broadcast, see exactly what happened to him there. But yeah, nonetheless, you've done your job, and you've bettered him sadly this weekend. So yeah, good for you. And we'll let you go now, mate. But before we do, if there's anybody that you'd like to give a shout out to, then you can do that now.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Obviously, you and Dara, your commentary and coverage of this series and the GT4s on Monday is absolutely class, and I love watching it back afterwards. So thank you for that. And then also for all the people who put the league on, as always, James and Rob and all the guys who are involved in the admin side of things, and also all of the guys, my teammates at GP2, so the Kame and the Suma guys, everybody there. Thanks to them for racing with me, putting up with my terrible voice chat in the races, and also coming along with me to do some endurance races and things outside of the league. So yeah, thanks to all of you.
Very good, Robin. Yes, as always, I'm glad that everyone enjoys what me and Dara do. It's certainly a lot of fun, and I'm glad that it's nice and well received. And yeah, of course, good for the admins and the teammates as well. So thanks for joining us, Robin, and fingers crossed for the results in all the championships, all your endurance and whatnot. It's going pretty well at the moment, so fingers crossed that continues. Thanks for joining us. We're going to go and speak to Mr. Shisby now, who had one of his best results of the season.
Cheers, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Robin.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. Great to speak to him, and it's great that we'll be able to speak to Dean as well after his great P2. Dean, welcome in. Can you hear us?
Hi, lads. How are you doing?
Hello, Dean. Well, I'm doing great, but something tells me you're going to be feeling even better. Just talk us through that one, because, I don't really, you qualified pretty well, but did you ever have any expectation of finishing in P2? Obviously, Robin in the class of his own, but toward the end of the race, you held off Sarika Desda, you held off everybody else who dropped off the circuit, had incidents. You had a pretty successful night. I mean, congratulations.
Oh, cheers. To be honest, my pace was quite good. I was a little bit disappointed in quali. I had enough to probably get P2 in quali, and messed 2 of my laps up, so totally messed that up. And then, obviously, being stuck in the traffic, Robin just drove off, and congratulations to him. He drove a great race again. Deserves the win. So I knew that P1 was our question. To be honest, I was targeting, once I got into that, into the groove of the first few laps, I was thinking P3, we'll aim for that. I knew I was on a dry setup with wet tyres, hoping that the track was going to dry, as it did. So I just bided my time. I could see John slipping in front a little bit, and then I pull it back to him, and then he'd disappear a little bit more. So yeah, I was trying to maintain that as much as possible without losing too much time to him, having the dry setup on. But I also had pressure, as you boys probably saw, from Robin Aston behind. On the wet stint, I had him pretty much on my backside for quite a bit. And then I believe John spun, did he, after the pit? Because I think I was 3 or 4 seconds behind him. I ended up being 4 seconds in front, and then from that point on, I had a little bit of breathing space until Huss got right on my backside, and I was just about maintaining that gap, as you said, for about a second in between us. He'd pull it in a little bit. I got caught out by one of the back markers that really put him right on my backside. I think it was 0.2 off it. But then I managed to get that second gap again, and yeah, I just brought us over the line. So yeah, really happy to be back on the podium. Been a long time since the second race at Donington, so
yeah, I bet that feels good. And a lot of the guys ahead of you in the championship didn't have the best evening tonight, so I'm not going to attempt to do the maths, but you could quite comfortably, I think, find yourself inside the top 10, probably for one of the first times this season, which obviously bodes very well as we enter the second half of the season. With that knowledge, do you have any ambition for where you want to try and finish the season, or are you just going to try and keep up as the best form that you can and just see where you end up?
Probably, as I said in the first interview I had with you boys, I think I'm probably a top 10 driver if I can keep everything clean and good. I've had quite a bit of bad luck in some of these races, so yeah, aim for that top 10. Anything else is a bonus.
Awesome stuff, team. Well, as I say, big congratulations. Always nice to see drivers who are rarely on the podium get one. It's always a big opportunity, and in a night like this, a long race, difficult conditions, difficult track, it really proves that the sort of practice is paying off. So congratulations to you, and if there's anybody that you'd like to give a shout out to before we close, then you can do that now.
Oh, first off, I know that Danny Weir has given me a shout out, so love you too, mate. And then the Moonshiner boys, they were quite good tonight, encouraging me, keeping me cool, and yeah, helped me over the line. I know both of them didn't have the best of nights, but their support definitely helped me to get across the line. So yeah, cheers, lads.
Good
And
stuff, Dean.
last of all, to you two boys as well. Can't wait to watch the stream back again.
Yeah, it certainly was an entertaining one. Lots of battles this time, different to Virginia, which was a little bit sparse, but this one, yeah, action up and down the grid, so I'm sure you'll enjoy that one. Thanks for joining us, and yeah, good luck next week. Fingers crossed that this form can continue, but only a handful of races to go, so running out of opportunities, at least you've got another one.
Cheers, Joe, anyway.
Yeah, good stuff, man, team. Enjoy your
See you
weekend, mate.
later.
See you soon.
Cheers.
Mate.
Bye-bye.
Intrigued then. Great to speak to him. P2 in the end, and I think that's going to round us up, Joe, after a good night's worth of racing.
Good stuff, Dara. Well, absolutely right, and we've spoke in detail there to some of the lucky podium. Well, I wouldn't say lucky actually. I don't believe in luck. You know, they've all been there and they've done what they had to do. But yeah, some of the guys bringing home some good points. Always good to speak to them. So we'll close up then. If you've got anything to add, Dara, before we finish, I'll let you do that, and then we'll run through the closing statement.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to next week. COTA is going to be an exciting race, and 2 30-minute races are going to keep us well entertained. Great track to go racing, and championships looking pretty well poised into the final few weeks.
Yeah, they are. Things will really shape up a little bit and change. I think the order we'll see shifting around with a couple of those drivers at the front not having the best time of it tonight. So let's keep our eyes peeled on those results getting released to see who is going to move right up toward the front of the order. As he says there, Dara, we move to COTA next week. It'll be the GT4s and the TCRs arriving there first on Monday night at 8 o'clock, and then we will join us here this time next week for round 7 of the GT3 Championship. Of course, as always, scan the QR code on screen now to join us over at ESR. Hundreds and hundreds of us getting involved in racing more or less now every night of the week. Not quite, but it's certainly getting there. We've got some exciting information that is going to be released in the next couple of days, so keep your eye out on the server for that. And then, of course, waiting lists for Mondays and Thursdays available, and it'll soon be time to release the information for next season's championship. So don't wait, get involved now, and this time in the next couple of months you can join us on the track when we continue our coverage of both of our championships. So thanks to all for watching, thanks to everyone who sticks around as always until the end, and until then, enjoy your weekend, and we'll catch you all on Monday night back with the GT4s and the TCRs. Thanks all, see you soon.